Welcome to Eric Abbenante versus the world. Not the world versus Eric Abbenante, because I'm against the world. The world is not against me. This is the newest show on the Channel 310 network, a political talk show hosted by yours truly, Eric Abbenante. And I am the first white host in the history of Channel 310. And it is such an honor as a white person to break racial barriers and be needed for diversity. It feels great. I just want to say all the music you're going to hear on my show is done by my childhood friend Nick Smith, aka Vulpine. It is some of the best music you'll hear. It's video game style. You're going to love it. And on our show, we talk about the biggest stories in the political landscape of the world. Unfortunately, this week, the biggest story in the political landscape is Donald Trump. So we're gonna have to talk about him at the Jew News Desk. I'll see you there.
We'll do it live.
Okay.
No. We'll do it live. Fuck it. Do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live. Fucking thing sucks.
What really happened on that Thursday here at Augusta High School that led to Chris Wood's death?
The fuck is that? Shit.
USA, motherfucker.
Die in this fucking country ass fucked up town. So y'all need to hide your kids, hide your wife, and hide your husband because they raping everybody out here.
Drop that gun right now, USA!
Alright, you fucking got me. There ain't no news desk. It's just me on this couch with these pillows. Honestly, this looks like if the Blue's Clues guy directed 70s porn. That's me. So let's get to Jew News, where this Jew tells you about the news. Holy shit. Breaking news. Breaking fucking news. John McCain has just discontinued medical treatment on his brain cancer. Kind of like how the Republicans have discontinued treatment on the cancer in their party, known as Donald Trump. The National Enquirer is claiming that they have a safe of documents containing damaging stories about Donald Trump that they were paid to not publish. It's the first time the women in Trump's life have been in a safe location. Now, Trump hates all news besides Fox News, so he's gonna tear their ass up, right? Let's hear
the
this
National
shit.
Enquirer, which does have credibility. If that was the New York Times, they would have gotten Pulitzer Prizes.
And the fake news, somebody said, what's the chunk? I said, 80%.
Okay, Trump, so 80% of news is fake news? What's the other 20%? The stations you bought off? Okay, you can't cry wolf about fake news when you're paying to suppress real news about you. The top story in Jew News this week is the double conviction in the Trump administration, Michael Cohen and Paul Manafort. For those of you who don't know, Paul Manafort is Trump's former campaign manager, and Michael Cohen is Trump's former lawyer who was instructed to use campaign finances to pay off women Trump slept with. Lots of formers in Trump's life, just like his ex-wives. Let's start with Paul Manafort.
Okay, how close, I want to know, did this jury come to convicting Paul Manafort on all 18 counts?
By one.
So you all agreed on the 8 counts.
8 out of 18 counts. He's doing pretty good, right? I mean, he's more innocent than guilty.
Manafort
is facing 305 years in prison.
Prison for life? And the prosecution slept during the trial, and your ass is still going to prison. Who are your lawyers? Michael Cohen? Rudy Giuliani? Dear God. Oh wait, here's his dumbass lawyer.
He would like to thank Judge Ellis for granting him a fair trial. He is evaluating all of his options at this point.
Evaluating his options? He's about to go to prison for life. Here are his options. He can either be Trump's bitch and take a pardon, or he's about to be someone's bitch in prison. Enough with Paul Manafort. Let's get to the bigger story of Michael Cohen, who admitted to paying a combined $280,000 of Trump campaign finance money to Karen McDougal and Stormy Daniels. I mean, Trump definitely has a type. He loves fake boobs, but he hates fake news.
You have this Cohen guy. He doesn't know anything about Russian collusion, doesn't know anything about obstruction. He's a massive liar. If anything, it's turned very much in the president's favor.
I guess Rudy Giuliani's defense against Michael Cohen is that Michael Cohen paid these women to not have sex with him. Then again, Rudy Giuliani has been divorced multiple times due to his infidelity, so Rudy also has paid women to not have sex with him. Isn't it great that in 20 years we've gone from impeachment for a blowjob to, I don't know if the president's gonna get impeached for all those mistresses he paid off? Let's hear from the man himself, Donald Trump. Trump had an interview with Ainsley Earhart, one of the many Fox News blondes. They don't even allow brunette white people. I mean, look at all these blonde women. The Aryan Nation News Network. Anyway, she was granted the first interview with Donald Trump after the Michael Cohen and Paul Manafort convictions. Donald Trump started off by deflecting and saying, Obama did it too.
If you look at President Obama, he had a massive campaign violation, but he had a different attorney general.
Obama didn't report campaign contributions in one of the two elections that he won by a landslide. Donald Trump, on the other hand, directed his lawyer to pay people to not report what he had done to them in order to influence an election. It's like comparing apples to Donald Trump's orange. Like a bruised peach. An impeach, if you will. He also went on to say, Hillary did it too.
And look at the crimes that Clinton did with the emails, and she deletes 33,000 emails after she gets a subpoena.
You know why Hillary isn't being treated the same way you are, Trump? The Electoral College. Oh look, bipartisan support for hating the Electoral College. Then he went on to blame Jeff Sessions too.
I put an attorney general that never took control of the Justice Department, Jeff Sessions. Never took control of the Justice Department. It's a sort of an incredible thing.
People are already taking sides. Who you got, Sessions or Trump? In that game, I'm rooting for both team planes to crash into each other. Speaking of a plane crash, let's watch Donald Trump try to explain Michael Cohen.
Somebody that was with me that much, they make it sound like I didn't live without him.
Trump tries to distance himself from Michael Cohen, which normally he's great at. Ask his kids.
I understood Michael Cohen very well. What turned out he wasn't a very good lawyer.
You can't, in consecutive sentences, say, I knew someone pretty well, and turns out they're not a very good lawyer. That's like when your friend breaks up with his girlfriend, and he says, man, she was a bitch. So you chose to date a bitch? Either way, sounds like it's your fault.
But what Michael Cohen pled to weren't even campaign related. They weren't crimes.
Why is he doing this?
Because he made a great deal.
So Cohen made a great deal. Congrats, that's the first one in the Trump administration.
You see Mueller with the conflicts. He's so conflicted. Comey's his best friend. He had a really nasty business transaction with me, which he never reported. I've been talking about he never reports it.
I expected Trump to blame the victim for not reporting nasty business.
I wanted to stay uninvolved. But when everybody sees what's going on in the Justice Department, I always put justice now with quotes.
Trump puts Lady Justice in quotes because Lady Justice is how Trump has sex with all women, blindfolded.
You see Mueller with the conflicts, he's so conflicted. Comey's his best friend.
Trump and Fox News' big agenda is to spin the Mueller investigation into an investigation about the intelligence community itself, which is basically like saying, I'm not under investigation, you're under investigation.
Nothing to do with Russian collusion. This started as Russian collusion. This has absolutely nothing to do. This is a witch hunt and it's a disgrace.
You're saying no Russian collusion a lot for a guy who wasn't involved. I'd say doth protest too much, but Trump is so racist, he thinks Shakespeare is something tribal Africans do. It's like Al Capone saying, hey, you didn't convict me for all those guys I killed. You only got me for tax evasion.
If I ever got impeached, I think the market would crash. I think everybody would be very poor.
Look, everyone isn't going to be poor, but a lot of people are broke. And this impeachment talk will push both broke sides to vote in the upcoming midterm elections. Let's see if Democrats are more motivated to vote by impeachment than Republicans motivated to vote by preventing an impeachment. And this has been Jew News. I bet you learned a lot. Welcome to Eric versus the Planet. I love animal documentaries, especially the narrator. I wish he was here to document human life. And that's what I'm going to do on this segment each week, is narrate human life like the planet Earth narrator. And I got this idea by watching Mexicans build a wall, and boy, they are fucking great at it. Donald Trump was right, you guys are great at building walls. And honestly, my favorite planet Earth documentary I ever watched was watching Mexicans build shit. I mean, they're the shortest people, yet they're the ones carrying the 12-foot plywood boards. It's like watching an ant pick up a leaf. The strength the Mexican has! The strength within the density and mass of its muscles. A Mexican has more strength than the average human. It is a humanoid-like species. Here we see them in their natural habitat, the minimum wage job. Here we see them not working because Mexico is currently playing in the World Cup. And that's Eric Abbenante versus the Planet.
I'm many things, I'm many things. Yeah, I'm a convicted rapist.
We want the gold, sucker! Hulk Hogan, we coming for you, nigga!
I'm a semi-good husband.
I want to kiss you. I couldn't care less about the team struggling.
I wish one of your guys had children so I could kick them in their fucking head or stomp on their testicles so you could feel my pain, because that's the pain I have.
Getting your ass hammered by guys, there's no better feeling.
I normally don't do interviews with women unless I fornicate with them, so you shouldn't talk anymore unless you want to,
You better, Mom.
Welcome to the greatest sports segment in the world, because, it's sports. Everything has to be the greatest now. So, let's get to the biggest sports story in the world. France winning the World Cup. Great job, guys. Still doesn't make up for the fact that you guys lost World Wars I and II. I hate the United States soccer team, though. They're like the Trump administration. We elected them in 2016, and the only thing they're qualified to do is make us irrelevant on the world stage. Hate them. Let's go to the biggest story in American sports. LeBron James builds a school for underprivileged kids in Ohio. Bravo! Never been to college, providing a path for those to go to college. That's amazing. But if it's anything like LeBron, I'd be wary of it. It'll probably switch school districts whenever convenient. I mean, ironically, the school's motto is, "We help you make the right decision." Critics say this is a turning point for LeBron, but this is nothing new. He's been building great things his entire career and then leaving town immediately after. This is going to set a dangerous precedent for people expecting basketball players to do the jobs of politicians and billionaires. People are already asking Blake Griffin, "Hey, why haven't you fixed the Flint, Michigan water crisis?" And his response was, "I'm a power forward. My skills are better suited for jumping over Kias, not fixing the crumbling infrastructure." I mean, I feel bad for LeBron. There are people who will never like him just because he isn't white. You know why white people love Larry Bird? Because of his dad, Jim Crow. It is 2018, and the first ever proposal to pay student athletes in college has been presented. Before you get on a guy who never went to college, maybe get on the colleges who have never provided the same things that he has. And this has been the greatest sports segment in the world. This segment called Shameless Plug, where I plug someone for being shameless. This week, it's the shoe company New Balance for publicly backing Donald Trump and then becoming the unofficial shoe of the white supremacist movement. First off, how does New Balance support Donald Trump? Donald Trump is the old Balance. If he wanted New Balance, then he wouldn't have shit. Okay? Donald Trump doesn't like new, he definitely doesn't like balance. Him and the white supremacists need a shoe called Old Segregation, so that when him and the white supremacists wear Old Segregations, they can do their workout plan, burning CrossFit. Welcome to my segment, Climate is Changing, because duh. Climate deniers and Republicans, you know, one and the same, will have you believe that climate isn't changing, Mother Nature's just going through menopause and she's having a hot flash. But there are signs to the contrary. The Great Barrier Reef is the largest dying object that can be seen from space. Besides America, of course. Trump's so stupid, he thinks the Great Barrier Reef is Australia's Great Wall to keep the Asians out. Climate deniers will have you believe that temperature changes happen all the time, but the water temperature has risen 2 degrees in a very short amount of time. If your blood temperature rose 2 degrees in a very short amount of time, you'd be at risk of dying. When the water temperature rises, for coral, they release algae from their tissues, causing their skin to go completely white and die. Coral bleaching. Unfortunately, Republicans and climate deniers will love coral bleaching because it reminds them of their hair. For most people, when they see pale, they see unhealthy. For Republicans, they make it unhealthy to be anything but pale. And it's not just the Great Barrier Reef. Indonesian reefs, only 6% are healthy. And for those of you saying, oh, the extra algae will help all those animals like blue whales who feed off of algae byproducts. Well, blue whales are at 9,000 from their original peak of 300,000. Humans are a virus to Mother Nature, and until we make her healthy, she will get rid of us. Thank you. This has been Climate is Changing. Welcome to my segment, The World's Most Evil Companies, where I review each episode what I think are the world's most evil companies of all time. This week is going to be hard to top, but luckily, the world is pretty evil. Bayer is my most evil company of all time this week. Now, you may know Bayer as the German pharmaceutical company that invented aspirin, or the company that just merged with Monsanto. Now, people are aware of how evil Monsanto is, but Monsanto's merger with Bayer hardly makes Bayer any more evil. It's like telling a morbidly obese person to not eat ice cream. It won't make a difference. Now let's backtrack to Bayer's past before World War II, when it was known as IG Farben. Despite Germany losing World War I and its struggling economic state, German chemical companies were thriving, because people being poor and sick is great for business. IG Farben's executives plotted on how to take over the European chemical industry and then the world, but they needed a pawn, and Ronald Reagan was American and only a teenager at the time, so they found Hitler. And just like Reagan, all the interests and goals of the richest people in Hitler's country somehow became the goals and interests of Hitler.
Yes, Doctor, I'll remember. While his cold lasts, he should stay in bed, drink plenty of fluids, and take aspirin.
And take aspirin.
IG Farben was the largest financier of Hitler, the Nazis' rise to power. In return, Hitler and the Nazis later gave IG Farben enough money to make large industrial complexes and factories, what we now know as concentration camps. But there was a serious labor shortage because all the laborers, the males, were at war, and they're Nazis, so they're not going to let women work. Part of the motivation to make Jews scapegoats was so that they could become slaves at IG Farben concentration camps. Racism is the fuel for the vehicle of greed. We all know Auschwitz, the concentration camp, but very few know that it was built because it was connected via railway to the nearby Auschwitz IG Farben factory, which concentration camp slaves built as well. It's ironic that Nazis portrayed Jews as being greedy when they made money off of our slave labor. It's kind of like how white slave owners portrayed black people as being lazy. Basically, white slave owners project. When we see pictures of the concentration camps, we see torture and genocide. When IG Farben looked at the concentration camps, all they saw was money and profit. There is nothing cheaper than slave labor.
So take Bayer aspirin for fast relief whenever painful cold discomfort.
Most people know of Zyklon B, which one of IG Farben's companies created to gas Jews in the concentration camps. What most people don't know was Zyklon B was an insecticide that was widely used throughout Europe, just like we use Roundup today. See, Monsanto? Bayer's been doing this before you punks existed. IG Farben used concentration camp slave labor to make Zyklon B. Then Hitler and the Nazis bought Zyklon B from IG Farben to gas the workers. Pure profit. Capitalism at its finest.
And so quickly absorbed that Bayer is ready to go to work instantly.
We've all heard of Dr. Mengele and his twin studies, but that overshadows the real evil that was occurring. Bayer scientists were paid to conduct unethical research on concentration camp slaves for very profitable drugs that we still use today. The first versions of HIV and chemotherapy drugs that descend from modern versions that we use today were first tested on Holocaust victims, and Bayer were to go on to profit immensely from this. Profiting off of AIDS and cancer sounds like the final solution of poor people. HIV and chemotherapy drugs are primarily used on poor brown people, so the Fourth Reich is still creating the master race long after World War II.
The one thing doctors repeatedly specify is aspirin.
Now, we all know how World War II ended, and we've heard of the Nuremberg trials, but most people have only heard of one Nuremberg trial. There were 13, but we only hear about the first one, where the United States and Allied forces sentenced the highest-ranking German military officers to death. But the sixth Nuremberg trial, where they prosecuted the executives of IG Farben, was much different, even though the chief U.S. prosecutor said that without IG Farben, the Second World War would have probably never happened. Now, most of these men were convicted, but their sentences would make Brock Turner's sentence look like justice. For instance, Otto Ambrose, IG Farben executive and head of the Chemical Warfare Committee, convicted to mass murder and slavery and crimes against humanity, sentenced to 8 years, released in 4. Went on to work as an executive for such American chemical companies as W.R. Grace, Dow Chemical, which would create Agent Orange to use on Vietnamese people, and the American Army, if the connection wasn't obvious enough to you yet. This guy was a key member of the Holocaust, and he went on to live until the year I was born. Or what about Fritz der Beer, IG Farben executive and the creator of the Auschwitz concentration camp, convicted of slavery and mass murder, sentenced to 7 years, released after 2. Michael Vick did more time than this guy. The Holocaust lasted 8 years. America, here's a tip. Next time you convict somebody of slavery and mass murder, make the sentence longer than the period of slavery and mass murder. He went on to be the head of Bayer for 8 years. Bayer said, "We know how profitable Auschwitz was, and we know you have the experience to do the same for us." Nothing ever happened to the IG Farben executives, but don't worry, IG Farben paid a dear price, an entire $27 million to the victims of the Holocaust, but said that paying was not an admission of guilt. Not an admission of guilt? I never thought a Holocaust denier would be someone who was caught red-handed starting the Holocaust. $27 million for the atrocities of the Holocaust, and you called Jews cheap. After the Nuremberg trials, IG Farben would be split up into 3 of its biggest companies: Hochta, BASF, and Bayer. All 3 in 20 years would go on to be bigger than IG Farben ever was. And Bayer was the biggest of them all. I can hear the skeptics now. Eric, Bayer is so different now, even though the guy Bayer hired to run the company was the Nazi who constructed Auschwitz. Bayer has had too many post-war scandals to tell here, but there are 2 modern examples that point to how little they've distanced themselves from their Nazi roots. In 2011, Bayer admitted to giving HIV-contaminated blood to hemophiliacs in 1980. Bayer also admitted to selling those same people HIV drugs because you gotta get new customers somehow. Bayer thought Americans were so stupid that if they didn't report it to the English-speaking media, that we wouldn't hear about it until the outrage was over. They were right. Bayer paid $50 million, which to them is almost 2 Holocausts. Bayer said their company motto, "Paying is not an admission of guilt," but I have come up with a better commercial for them. Bayer, we make a killing off of AIDS, cancer, and the Holocaust. Which brings me to Bayer's most recent scandal, Essure, Bayer's permanent birth control for women. What could possibly go wrong? Let's watch the commercial.
What if I got pregnant again? Everything would change.
Do you ever worry about unplanned pregnancy? Now there's a way to push away those worries. If you know you're done having children, maybe it's time for Assure, a simple permanent birth control solution performed in a doctor's office in less than an hour, without hormones, cutting, or the risks of getting your tubes tied. Assure is FDA approved and has been in use for over 5 years. Assure is not reversible, may not be suitable for all women, and there are risks. Visit Assure.com or call 1-877-ASSURE-5 to find an Assure certified doctor near you.
Permanent, quick, cheap to make, that sounds really convenient for Bayer. And I do not like the sound of that irreversible part at the end. I'd like an objective opinion. How about a show literally called The Doctors?
The Essure is very effective. It's 99% effective. It's been out for 5 years. It's FDA approved.
4 out of 4 doctors recommend Essure because 4 out of 4 doctors are completely full of shit. Just kidding, they're full of Bayer money. Now let's hear from an actual Essure user.
Have you ever had any surgeries?
I had a medical device that broke, leaving fragments everywhere, which set off a connective tissue disorder that started deteriorating my joints.
Holy crap.
Yeah.
Sorry, but that's like...
I love how the nurse is telling her how fucked up her life is. Your job is to tell me how to fix the fuck up. Now, I know what you're saying. Eric, what does this have to do with Nazis? Earlier I told you about the Bayer Nazi experiments that were the foundation of medicines we still use today, such as chemotherapy and HIV drugs. Bayer also did sterilization experiments during the Holocaust. Here is a quote from the 6 Nuremberg trial documents about one of the Bayer Nazi doctors. Quote, Karl Klauberg developed a system of mass sterilization that consisted of introducing into the female reproductive organs a specifically prepared chemical irritant that produced severe inflammation. Within weeks, the fallopian tubes grew shut and were blocked. Now, Essure from Bayer doesn't have any of the foundations of those Nazi experiments, do they?
Basically, a micro insert, and we have one right here, is placed into the uterus and then into the fallopian tubes. And what happens in the fallopian tubes is the tissue grows over it and forms a permanent blockage. So what happens is that the coils are placed, the tissue grows, and then as you see, it's a blockage, so those little guys, they're not getting by the tubes.
Dang, I did not see that coming. Yes, Bayer sells a permanent sterilization device for women that has its research foundations in the Holocaust. After consumer uproar, not the FDA, Bayer was forced to discontinue sales on the European market last year. But don't worry, you can still get it on the American market until the end of this year. Because why would Nazis want to profit off of sterilizing American women? I'm sure that Bayer will use its company slogan after paying the victims of Eshur. Paying is not an admission of guilt. Well, Bayer, I think you should change your company motto from this to this. Now, I tell you all this because Jews may have been the scapegoat of World War II, but racism was the scapegoat for greed. A conglomerate of powerful chemical companies known as IG Farben, that later became known as Bayer, had the motivation of greed to commit one of the largest genocides of all time. They profited on the mass death of people. I hope that doesn't continue to happen in America, but American companies' attitude towards greed is Sieg Heil. Welcome to my final segment, The Closer, where each episode I will end it by reviewing a little bit of comedy history. On the Sunset Strip, there are many famous clubs like the Body Shop and Crazy Girls, but nowhere is there more dick riding than at the Comedy Store. But how did this hierarchy of dick riding begin? Two Wisconsin kids, Mitzi Seidel and Sammy Shore, who couldn't make it in the big city, started a comedy club so that they could tell people that they can't make it in the big city. After Mitzi and Sammy divorced, Mitzi acquired the Comedy Store by negotiating a deal with Sammy to cut his child support payments from $1,100 to $600. Boss move by Mitzi. But what are you doing, Sammy Shore? You gave a woman a building and you couldn't reduce your child support payments by half? Was this Rudy Giuliani's first client? You gave her the building she built an empire off of, that you bought. How are you still paying for Pauly Shore? You're an idiot. Mitzi would then go on to create the Belly Room, a room designed specifically for women to get stage time. But if Mitzi got the Comedy Store through child support, isn't technically every room inside the Comedy Store the Belly Room?
Sammy Shore. Sammy, come out here. I got him.
Which brings us to the 1979 comedy strike, where Bud Friedman, owner of the Improv, and Mitzi Shore, owner of the Comedy Store, colluded to not pay the comedians. The strike might have not ever ended if someone didn't throw a Molotov cocktail that burned down half of the Improv. Someone is clearly from the Comedy Store. My conspiracy theory is Yakov Smirnoff. I mean, he was the only Russian comedian at the time. In my country, yes and includes Molotov cocktail. Just kidding. From public records, we know that it was Comedy Store door guy, Ollie Joe Prater. Safe to say, he really burnt a bridge with the Improv. The strike still continued until a Comedy Store representative returning from negotiations accidentally clipped Jay Leno with his car. Now, Jay wasn't hurt, but I'm sure he did his best soccer impression. Mitzi was so distraught that she ended the negotiations an hour later.
Somebody threw a Molotov cocktail on the back of the improvisation and burnt the improvisation down.
It was devastating. You know, when you see a baby burning, by pardon the pun, it's terrible.
Bud then came to us and said, look, if you strike me now, I'm dead. I'll be out of the business. Please don't strike me. But I said, but no one wants to strike you. They just want to be paid. Will you sign a memo that once you get rebuilt, that you'll pay the comedian?
People may think I'm hard on Mitzi and her ownership, but history is written by the winners. In this documentary, all we see are the people that Mitzi helped. There are many that Mitzi actively didn't help. John Witherspoon of Friday fame was a Comedy Store doorman. Mitzi didn't want him to showcase for a role in a Clint Eastwood movie, but he warmed up the audience anyways because all the comedians Mitzi wanted to showcase on the lineup were late. John killed it in front of Clint and got a role in his movie, and Clint left before seeing any of the comedians that Mitzi wanted to showcase on the lineup. Now, Clint would probably go on to call John the N-word, but at least Clint paid John. Now, Mitzi would go on to create an artist's haven in the 80s and 90s, where the culture was all about taking risks and working out new material. Today is a far cry from what she created. I've seen plays less scripted than some of the sets I see at the Comedy Store on the main stages.
Mitzi made it easy for me to be accepted comedically without having to be a stand-up. And that, during that period of time, was a feat.
With Mitzi's death, a question remains. Will the Comedy Store be sold? The Comedy Store makes far less money than the businesses that surround it. There are 4 Shore children: Polly, Scott, Sandy, and Peter. Peter Shore is the one who runs the Comedy Store now, and not surprisingly, the company is more focused on increasing revenues than ever before. The property is worth easily tens of millions of dollars. Amoeba Records, on nearby Highland and Sunset, a property smaller than the Comedy Store, sold for over $30 million. With the greed that permeates the 21st century, ask yourself this. Do you expect 4 people to turn down over $10 million each? I'm not buying that at any store, even the Comedy Store. Well, I want to thank you so much. That was the end of my episode. This has been so much fun. This is just the pilot. It'll get better. But I want to thank everyone at Channel 310. I want to thank Lila Hart of Small Talk, my director. I want to thank Victor Martinez of High Tonight Show, who made the logo. I especially want to thank Vulpine to make all the music you've heard throughout the episode. This is just the pilot. It'll get better. I will have guests on next time. I will have my correspondent and director, Lila Hart, do a segment. It'll be amazing. But, you know, it's going to get better. And this was so much fun. Thank you all so much for watching. And here's a stand-up clip in the credits. At the place I used to work, like these Mexicans, they were building out one side of the warehouse. And it was just incredible to watch. Like, Mexicans are like the shortest people, yet they're the ones who are always working construction. It's like amazing. They're the ones picking up the fucking 9 feet to 12 feet boards. It's unbelievable. It's like watching an ant pick up a leaf. You know, it's just like the strength a Mexican has, and within the density, within the mass of its muscles. You know? A Mexican has more density of muscle mass than the average human. You know? It is a humanoid-like species, you know. I love that. It's my favorite Planet Earth documentary, watching Mexicans build stuff. Their natural habitat, the minimum wage job. Here we see them not working because Mexico is currently playing in the World Cup. You know?